This happened in 2023. My student loan payments were kicking in, and I was scrambling for a side hustle. I'd signed up for InstaDrop, a delivery service, and gotten approved, but for a solid month, the app just sat on my phone, unused. I kept making excuses. Then came a Tuesday night. I was home from my main job, restless and bored. I figured it was the perfect low-stakes time to finally give it a shot and see what would happen. The first few runs were surprisingly easy. I quickly got into the rhythm of it, and my confidence grew. I'd been out for about 3 hours, and the clock had just ticked past midnight. That's when an order flashed on my screen that was totally different. The tip was astronomical, projected at $50 or $60. Without a moment's hesitation, I smashed the accept button. The pickup was from a 24-hour diner, located right where the main road started to snake out of town and into the dense dark woods beyond. I hadn't cleared the town limits when my phone buzzed with the customer's call. His voice was strange, completely flat, without emotion. He wanted me to confirm the destination. A little thrown off, I recited the address from the app. An uncomfortable silence followed. I was about to ask if he was still on the line when he hung up abruptly. The huge tip felt completely disconnected from the cold, very weird call. So I pressed on. The GPS said it was only a 15-minute drive, but the winding road, disappearing into the blackness of the forest, made it feel like an expedition. There were no streetlights out here, just the occasional reflective sign marking another sharp curve in the road. As I drove deeper, a sense of unease started creeping in. It was a combination of things: the unnerving phone call, the total isolation of the road, and a thick fog rolling down from the surrounding hills. It all felt wrong. My dread only intensified when I turned off the pavement onto a long unpaved track that cut directly into the woods. I crept along the gravel path, my headlights barely piercing the fog. Finally, a structure emerged. A stark, modern A-frame cabin, all sharp angles and dark wood, looking completely alien in the ancient forest. I put the car in park and got out, grabbing the food. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was absolute, a heavy, oppressive quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. The house itself was just as silent and still. I walked up to the front door, planning to leave the bag and go, but the door was already slightly ajar. From deep inside the house, a voice called out, the same flat, monotone voice from the phone. "Is that the delivery?" I confirmed it was, saying I'd leave his order on the porch. "No, please," he replied quickly. "Could you bring it inside? Just set it on the kitchen counter." I pushed the door open and stepped over the threshold. The air inside was chilly and smelled sharply of pine cleaner, with a faint metallic undertone. A few feet in, a sudden deafening noise erupted from a back room. A harsh blast of radio static. "Hello?" I yelled over the noise. "Sir?" There was no reply, just the hiss and crackle of the static. Suddenly, the huge tip felt like bait. This was all wrong. Why would he turn on static that loud, and then just go silent? The main hallway led toward a dimly lit kitchen area, but the room the static was coming from, just off to the side, was a pit of complete darkness. I couldn't see anything inside it at all. I dropped the food right there on the floor and spun around, making a break for the front door. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw a tall silhouette detach itself from the darkness by the entrance. I couldn't see a face, just a dark form blocking my escape. In that frozen moment, I saw a faint glint of something metallic held low in his hand. I didn't think, I just reacted, shoving past the figure and bursting through the open doorway into the foggy night. It was only when I was back on the main road speeding away that it all clicked into place. The static wasn't random. It was a cover designed to mask the sound of him moving to the front door to trap me inside. That night I deleted the app.
I was 25, and after flaming out of a tech job I once loved, I was taking a self-imposed sabbatical in a town where I knew no one. The whole point was to disconnect. So, when I saw a posting for a night auditor at a motel, it felt perfect. The place was called the Starlight Motor Inn, a relic from another time pushed up against the highway, miles from the nearest town. Its only neighbor was a derelict drive-in movie theater, its massive screen a blank white tombstone against the night sky. I'd had a couple of orientation shifts, but this was my first night flying solo. The first few hours were dead quiet. A trucker, a family in a packed minivan. They all came, got their keys and disappeared. Standard stuff. But then a woman came in who was different. She was trying for casual, but her hands trembled when she pushed a wad of cash across the counter. She kept her eyes down and just wanted the room, fast. For the next hour, the only thing moving was the occasional pair of headlights on the highway. Then, the glass door swung open and a man stepped inside. No car had pulled up, he just materialized out of the darkness. I figured he must have been a guest already, but he immediately proved me wrong, asking if we had any vacancies. Sure do. The whole place is practically yours. Want me to get you set up? He barely seemed to hear me. His eyes were locked on the key rack on the wall behind my head, a grid of little slots with brass-tagged keys. He scanned it like he was memorizing a map. Finally, he shook his head. "No, I'm good," he said, and walked back out the door. I watched him leave, expecting to see taillights flare to life, but there was nothing. The parking lot was still and empty, save for the guests' cars. Where did he come from? The nearest sign of life was a truck stop a dozen miles down the road. It was a long walk on a moonless night. I stepped outside and peered into the darkness. The lot was silent. The man was gone. There was nowhere to go but the motel or the abandoned drive-in. Shaking my head, I went back inside. My manager hadn't left me much to do, just handle the desk, so the minutes crawled by in the profound silence of the middle of nowhere. About an hour later, the phone on the desk buzzed, making me jump. The display showed a room number. I picked it up. It was the woman from earlier, her voice a tight whisper. "He's here," she breathed into the phone. "He's standing outside my window." I was out of my chair in a second. As I pushed through the front door, I caught a flicker of movement at the far end of the building, a tall shadow detaching itself from her window and melting into the deeper darkness near the old drive-in screen. I jogged down the walkway to her room. She opened the door a crack, her face pale. I asked her what happened. She said he didn't say anything, just stood there, watching her through the glass. When I described the man from the lobby, she nodded, her eyes wide with fear, offering to call the sheriff, but she was insistent. "No, please, don't, he'll leave. I just want to be gone in the morning." There was nothing I could do, so I returned to the office. I spent the next 2 hours replaying it all in my head. Who was this guy? What did he want? The feeling of unease was a physical thing, a cold knot in my stomach. Then I heard it. Not a loud commotion, but a single sharp crack like glass shattering. I bolted from the office. Fast. Down at the end, the light in the woman's room was on, the door hanging open. I ran, my heart pounding. Peeking inside, I saw him. He had her by the wrist, his back to me, pinning her against the far wall. He was talking to her, his voice a low, menacing hiss. I have no idea what I yelled, just a raw, panicked noise. He went rigid, then slowly turned. He didn't look angry, he looked annoyed. His eyes were cold and assessing. He looked right through me, then released the woman's arm and walked calmly out of the room. He brushed past me without a word and disappeared into the shadows of the looming movie screen. I made sure she was okay. Then I went straight to the office and dialed 911. It all came out then. The man was her ex-partner. She had left him weeks ago after his behavior had become obsessive and threatening. She was trying to build a new life, and he was hunting her. He hadn't stolen a key. He'd pried open the rusted, faulty lock on the window, a known issue the owner had mentioned in passing during my training. She hadn't wanted the police involved because she feared that engaging with the system would only feed his obsession, making him more determined. That night changed how I saw the quiet. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was just empty, a place where darkness could hide things. I stayed on for a couple more months, but I never shook the feeling of that man's cold stare. Every late-night arrival sent a jolt of fear through me. As soon as I saved up enough to move on, I did, leaving the starlight and its silent watching screen in my rearview mirror.
My name is Chloe. and I was 22 at the time. I had just relocated to a quiet town to be near my family after a few years away. They lived in the bustling city, but I preferred a slower pace, so I found a place about an hour's drive away. I didn't know much about the town before I moved, but my parents assured me that the surrounding areas were safe, and the rent for apartments was reasonable. I had been jumping from one job to another, never quite finding something that felt right. Once I was settled in my new apartment, the job hunt began in earnest. My savings were dwindling, so I couldn't afford to be selective. I came across an ad for a position at a local family-owned hardware store. It wasn't a well-known chain, but I had some experience working in a similar environment during my college years, so I sent in my application, hoping my background would give me an edge. To my surprise, I received a call just a few hours later from a man named Mark. The quick response was unexpected. After a brief chat and a few standard questions, he offered me the job on the spot, no interview necessary. There was something about his voice, a strange cadence that I couldn't quite place, that left me with an unsettled feeling. The only catch was the position was for the night shift, stocking shelves. I had never worked overnight and was hesitant, but job opportunities were scarce in this small town, so I decided to accept. My first shift was 3 days later. I gathered my paperwork and left my apartment around 9:30 p.m. The store closed at 9 p.m., so when I arrived, the parking lot was deserted and the building was dark. Mark was waiting by the entrance, a silhouette against the glass doors. He opened them for me, and I stepped inside. Mark was a large man, probably around 6'2", with a stocky build, a shaved head, and a thick dark beard. He led me to a back office to sort out the hiring documents. As we walked through the dimly lit store, I couldn't help but notice its state of disrepair. The aisles were grimy, the shelves were old and dusty, and the whole place had a neglected, eerie feel. Trying to reassure, I tried to dismiss my concerns, telling myself this was probably typical for a small-town hardware store. In the office, while Mark reviewed my papers, he made small talk. His questions started off normal, asking about my move, but then they took a strange turn. Henchelude, he wanted to know if I lived by myself, if I had driven to work, and if anyone would be picking me up later. I gave vague answers, feeling a growing sense of unease. Throughout our conversation, he maintained a wide, fixed smile that seemed completely out of place with his gruff appearance. It felt forced and unnatural. After stashing my belongings in the office, we finally started the shift. Mark showed me to an aisle with several carts of merchandise and left me to begin stocking. The work was simple and repetitive, and I quickly fell into a rhythm. The first hour passed uneventfully. I soon realized that Mark and I were the only two people in the entire store. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I started noticing him. I would look up from my work and see him standing at the end of the aisle, just watching me. He wouldn't say a word, just stand there, motionless, for what felt like several minutes. As soon as our eyes met, he would turn and walk away. I tried to rationalize it as a new boss checking on his employee, but his silence was unnerving. A sense of dread began to creep in, and I started to question whether I wanted to continue with this job. The whole situation felt wrong, but I pushed my fears aside, determined to make it through the night. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. Around 2 a.m., I saw Mark again, standing at the end of the aisle. This time, when I looked up, he started walking toward me, that same unsettling smile plastered on his face. Imitating Mark, "How about we take a 15-minute break? It's been a productive night," he said. I agreed, not realizing he intended for us to take our break together. He led me to a heavy metal door at the back of the building. He pushed the door open, gesturing for me to follow him outside. We were in a small fenced-in area behind the store where they received deliveries. A single car was parked in the lot. I assumed it was Mark's, but as soon as we stepped outside, the car's engine started and it sped away. Mark lit a cigarette and leaned against the brick wall. I stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do. I wanted to go back inside to the break room and eat the sandwich I had brought, but I also felt the pressure to make a good impression on my first day. The silence stretched on, and I could feel Mark's eyes on me. It was the most uncomfortable I had ever felt. After a long silent minute, a car rounded the corner of the building. It was the same one that had just left. It slowed down and pulled up directly in front of us. I glanced at Mark, expecting to see some sign of surprise, but his expression was cold and unreadable. He was staring at me, completely unfazed by the car's arrival. A chilling thought crossed my mind. This was a setup, and Mark was part of it. Before the car came to a complete stop, I bolted. I ran back through the metal door, through the warehouse, and toward the office where I had left my things. When I got there, everything was gone. My purse, my keys, my jacket, all of it had vanished. I heard the sound of multiple footsteps approaching, and I knew I had to get out. I sprinted to the front of the store and out into the night. I remembered passing a 24-hour gas station a few blocks away and ran as fast as I could, not stopping until I reached the safety of its bright lights. The clerk called the police for me. Once I was safe, a small part of me wondered if I had overreacted, if it was all a big misunderstanding. Those doubts were quickly erased when the police arrived at the hardware store. They questioned Mark and searched the premises. They found all of my belongings in the office, right where I had left them. Mark had put everything back. He denied that any car had pulled up, and when the police asked to see the security footage, the only camera that wasn't working was the one covering the back of the building. In the end, there was no concrete evidence, and the case was dropped. I broke my lease and moved in with my parents, needing time to recover from the ordeal. I'll never know what Mark had planned for me that night, but it's clear he was trying to erase any trace of me ever being there. I'm just grateful I trusted my instincts and didn't stick around to find out. Thanks for following along with my story. It's been helpful to share this and connect with others who have had similar experiences. Your support means more than you know.